Today, we become legends.
Ravana is a very interesting god that's super fun to play with some massive outplay potential if you learn him well. Today's guide will hopefully help you with that, so let's jump right in. As always with my guides, I'll be splitting these into 4 different sections to make it easier to follow. You can skip around to certain sections if you want to using the timestamps on screen and in the pinned comment down below. So first up, section 1 will be Ravan's basic playstyle and a general overview of him. Section 2 is all of Ravan's abilities in depth, what they do and the best ways to use them. Section 3 will be Ravan's item options and build paths for the jungle and why I build him the way I do. And finally, section 4 will be some general tips and tricks to make the most out of Ravan in your games. So with that covered, let's start with Ravan's basic playstyle and why you might want to play him. So Ravan is a pretty all-in type character. He's ability focused and will tend to dive the backline, nuke a carry and then get out safely. He has crazy burst damage but relatively long cooldowns compared to other assassins. His movement options are unorthodox but definitely very powerful once you learn them to their full potential, and he has some decent CC but not too much. He's definitely more focused on damage and overall utility than crowd control. So if you enjoy diving backlines and a slightly unorthodox and atypical assassin kit, you'll probably like Ravan. Alright, so now you know he's a god you want to learn, let's jump in with all of Ravan's abilities in depth. So first up, Ravan's passive, Chain of Blows, is very simple. Every 8 successful basic attacks or hits from abilities, Ravan gains a 5% max health shield which he can stack up to 3 times for 15% max health total. While he has this shield, he also gains 3% movement speed per stack up to 9%. You obviously only gain 1 stack from basic attacking, but you can gain multiple stacks per ability cast providing you hit multiple enemies. So this isn't really a passive you need to pay attention to, this is just a nice bonus while you're clearing camps or minions to take a little bit less damage early on and have some extra speed to move about the jungle or chase down kills. Moving on to Ravan's 1, Prana Onslaught. This is Ravan's bread and butter. Ravan throws a punch in a cone in front of him doing 90 up to 310 base damage and 80% scaling, while slowing enemies hit by 25% for 2.5 seconds. This has a pretty short range, not much further than a melee basic attack, and has a 9-second cooldown, making it fairly spammable for camp clear and fighting enemies. It does have 8 more range than a basic attack, so you can use it to finish off enemies that are just out of range from your normal basics. Pretty much this is your main jungle clear ability and your main damage for ganks and fights due to its low cooldown and slow that allows you to stay in range for more basic attacks or to hit your other abilities more easily on the slowed target. Ravan's second ability is Overhead Kick. This one is a little more interesting and unique than his 1 and passive that we've covered so far. Ravan performs a high kick, doing damage to all enemies in a line in front of him and becoming CC and damage immune while also gaining a large speed boost for the duration. This ability lasts 1 second. So the damage on this ability isn't terrible, but for the most part, this ability is used for the immunity to damage and CC. This is best used to avoid a big CC or powerful damage ability from the enemy and to keep chasing them down. This is Ravan's only real movement and safety option outside of his ultimate, so it's usually best to not waste this for damage, though sometimes if you need that last 200 damage or so to secure a kill, it can be used that way. Just keep in mind that you leave yourself vulnerable if you burn the 2 for damage, since this ability has an 18-second cooldown that scales down to 14 seconds. This is the last ability you'll level, so for a lot of the game it's going to be on a very long cooldown. This ability also only lasts 1 second, so the timing window can take a bit to get used to for immuning things, but that's more just something you come to terms with from playing the god a lot and from experience than something I can really teach you. Alright, so Ravan's 3 is a little more straightforward. The 10-hand Shadow Fist is a line projectile that passes through minions and camps but stops at the first god hit. This deals 100 up to 260 plus 70% scaling in damage and roots for 1.25 seconds. This will also heal for 10 up to 70 for each 3 minions and 1 god that you hit with the ability. So up to 4 heals maximum if you hit 3 minions and 1 god with the cast. The cooldown once again is pretty long at 16 seconds at all ranks. So this is Ravan's only hard CC in his kit, making it critical to use this effectively. Waiting for someone's jump or dash before using this is a good way to confirm the 1.25 second route and follow up, rather than just using it and having them immediately jump away, which wastes the route, because this ability doesn't cripple, it's just a route. It also gives some decent sustain, up to 210 per cast on camps once you rank it up, so you can heal a bit out of fights once you get this ranked up a little bit. Other than that, it's a pretty simple ability, just hit an enemy god with it and follow up on your route with your 1, basic attacks, or the ultimate, which we'll cover now. So Mystic Rush is a fairly long-range leap that does 200 up to 500 base damage and 100% scaling to all enemies hit. Enemy gods hit by this take 10% more damage from all sources, not just from Ravan but from everything, and Ravan will gain 10 up to 30% damage mitigation from all sources after casting this ultimate, regardless of if he actually hits anyone with the ability. This ult has a slightly longer cooldown than normal at 110 seconds that scales down to 90 seconds as you rank it up. Most other ultimates start at 90 seconds. So this ult is really what makes Ravan such a monster. It can be used in a few different ways, such as to engage, to chase, to run away. You can even use it in place to catch enemies off guard and confirm the damage. With that said, the damage on this is solid, but the increased damage taken and the damage mitigation you get for 5 seconds after landing is insane, and allows Ravan to really go ham in the enemy's backline after ulting. Just like the 2, make sure you don't waste this ability due to the long cooldown and your lack of movement options if you burn the ult. Sometimes it's good as an engage, but often you're better trying to engage with Blink or the Root, and using the ultimate to follow their dash or jump once they use it. At that point, they're a sitting duck taking 10% more damage and you're taking 30% less, so you can finish off the kill quite easily and get out safely. This ult is the centerpiece of Ravan's whole kit, so making effective use of it is what separates a good Ravan player from an average one. So with all Ravan's abilities covered, let's talk about what items I go for on him and a full build example for jungling with the Demon King. So for a starter build on Ravan jungle, you of course need Assassin's Blessing for the extra camp clear and sustain. Then you want to go with a tier 1 item, that's usually going to be Mace, but if you want to rush Transcendence or Hydras, you can also go Morningstar here, though I recommend Mace. Then as of right now, you want Hand of the Gods to clear your back camps quickly early on. Then if you went Mace, you have room for 1 health potion, and if you went Morningstar, you have room for 2 health potions. That completes your starting build, so your first item after this is always boots. For Ravan in jungle, you have 2 viable options in my opinion. The first, and in my opinion best option right now, is Talaria boots, which gives you tons of movement speed and some MP5 for sustaining in the jungle. The other option is the tried and true Warrior Tabi that offers more damage at the cost of less movement speed and none of that juicy MP5. Like I said, both of these options are viable in my opinion, but I lean towards Talaria personally, though once these get nerfed, maybe Warrior Tabi will be better. So after boots, you want to finish your tier 1 starter item into a full tier 3. If you went Mace, which I highly recommend you do, you basically have 2 options, being the Crusher and Brawler's Beatstick. You could go Jotun's Wrath here as well, if you really like having CDR, but personally I think Crusher is the better choice. You go Brawlers if the enemy team has a lot of healing or excessive lifesteal like Anubis for example, otherwise get Crusher since it procs the passive on all 4 of your abilities and Ravan uses the attack speed pretty well too. If you did go Morningstar in your starting build, then you'll be finishing that into Transcendence here. So once you finish your boots and your first item, you can start diverging your build into what you like the most and what's best against the enemy team. So I'll cover all these items I consider for the rest of my build at this point, and we'll finish off this section afterwards with a full build example for Jungle Ravan. So aside from the items I already mentioned that you could build later in the build if you want to, those being Brawler's Beatstick, Jotun's Wrath, the Crusher and Transcendence, Arendite is one of Ravan's best items in my opinion and is often my choice in 3rd or 4th slot for the build. This item should always be in your build somewhere, it's just insane on Ravan. The stats are great for him and he uses the passive insanely well since he often ults very aggressively onto the backline, at which point he's in a perfect spot to follow up after ulting using that Arendite passive. Hydra's Lament is pretty good for Ravan. He likes to weave in auto attacks between his abilities to make use of the passive, and the stats are just generally good for an ability based assassin. Titan's Bane is the go-to if you need to kill tanks late game. Often you won't really need to since your main priority as a jungler is killing squishies, but if you find you do need to kill tanks, Titan's Bane is your best friend. Void Shield is a good bruiser item if you need some defense against physicals. This gives you that while also having some decent damage and penetration as well. Heartseeker is pretty much a must-have on most ability-based assassins come late game, and Ravan is no exception. It's extremely expensive, so only get this in 5th or 6th slot or even selling your boots for it, but the sheer power this item gives you for 1 slot of your build is crazy. Bloodforge is another expensive late game luxury item that can be good if you're getting a lot of kills in fights. The shield and speed from the passive on this item can really help snowball a single pick into a teamfight win as you go ham in the backline. Relic Dagger is a good utility item for the middle of the build that's great if you want more relic uses. The base stats on the item are pretty good for the cost too, but this does come with no damage. And finally, if you need some pure defense for late game teamfights, Magi's Cloak and Mantle of Discord are both decent options that can keep you from being locked down too easily. So that's all my item options I typically pick from when playing Ravan. Let's finish up this section with a full build example for jungle. Start with Assassin's Blessing, Mace, 1 health potion and Hand of the Gods. Grab Talaria boots, then finish your Mace into the Crusher or Brawler's Beatstick against healing. Then get Transcendence, Arendite, Void Shield, sell your Blessing for Heartseeker, and if the game goes long enough, you can sell your boots for Mantle of Discord and get the Elixir of Speed. Your relics for Jungle Ravan should be Blink and Beads in whichever order you prefer or need for the current match. Alright, so with builds done, let's finish off this guide with a bit on some tips and tricks to up your game on the Demon King. So as I've touched on before, Ravana's movement options are a little unconventional and it takes some getting used to. Don't waste the 2 as it's your only safety option outside of using your ultimate, so in general you don't want to use this for damage unless it's finishing off a kill that you won't get punished for. Try to engage with blink or other means as much as possible as well, so you can save your ultimate for chasing the enemy's movement option, or for getting out if it's a bad fight. Sometimes ulting over a wall is the play since it's better than a guaranteed death if you get caught out of position in a bad fight. Your ultimate as Ravana is often on a longer cooldown than the enemy jungler's ultimate. Keep this in mind for when and where you gank or take fights in the jungle. Just because your ult still has 20 seconds left on it doesn't mean the enemy's also has 20 seconds. Likelihood is it's already back up and they can use that to their advantage, so make sure you play around your slightly longer ult cooldown. So I know I just said that Ravana's 2 is best used for utility and dodging key enemy abilities, and while that's usually true, don't underestimate the damage of this ability. It might seem low, but once ranked up it hits for 210 plus 70% of power, which can be upwards of 400 damage late game. So don't be afraid to secure kills with it if you're unlikely to get punished for doing so, such as in 1v1s or if you're in a fractured fight where the enemy team aren't in position to punish you for it. But that's it from me on the complete Ravana guide for Season 7. If you enjoyed and learnt something from this, don't forget to drop a like before you leave and subscribe for more God guides coming in the future. Catch you guys in another video later on. Have a great day, stay safe, and peace out you nerds.